What is vocational discipleship and why is it important? Pretty much what vocational discipleship is. It's a process by which we would help someone understand their role in the workplace in terms of
Mm,
their calling and what has God called them to do,
mhm,
and that they are made in the image of God to do things in the world, and that is meant to bring God glory and to do good.
Mhm.
So it's pretty much like a discipleship, mentoring, where an experienced person in a specific workplace would mentor someone who is younger, who's maybe they just graduated, or maybe they want to get into a specific type of career. And that experienced person, um, a believer, will be, mentoring someone and how they can make a difference for Jesus in their specific workplace and their specific
mm.
calling.
That's so huge because I feel like that is not a thing that exists within the church space that I'm aware of. Because this is literally my first time hearing about vocational discipleship. Did not
Mm,
know this existed because it
yeah.
just makes so much sense. It makes so much sense.
Mhm.
It just makes logical sense. If I am let's say I'm a firefighter, and this kid in my church, yeah, he just graduated high school, and he's like, I want to be a firefighter. And then you have all this experience of firefighting, but also
Yeah.
you've also experienced with like the gospel and how you live out your faith within that vocation.
Mhm.
It just makes so much sense. Like, why wasn't this a thing when we grew up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. Like I don't think it's necessarily like the first time I've heard of it. But I've only heard like echoes. Like a friend of mine would be like,
Mm,
"Yeah, meeting up with someone older. He's really like showing me the ropes about like my faith." So it'd be like a little bit more general, almost like just like a spiritual mentorship, which in most cases that's what it would end up being like. But with vocational discipleship, that seems a lot more like intentional, kind of like what are your gifts, or what is God trying to call you to. Questions about um, how do we bridge your faith and Christianity, and such.
mm,
So, and I think those are conversations that yeah, like what you said, Billy, like that I kind of wish that we had when we were younger.
Yeah.
Like I remember, like as a high school student, like we had no idea what we want to do, so we just kind of just follow whatever our parents want us to do, or whatever,
right.
or what we think, or what our school or what our classmates are telling us that we should get into, and what's deemed more successful. So
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
yeah, so we got guidance in terms of career, but not with bridging with career and
And
faith.
faith for sure, definitely. Yeah, this is like pretty crucial because I feel like some Christians they it's maybe they may have like a hard time with integrating their faith within the work because maybe the work that they do isn't as hands-on or as I guess like human interaction in the sense because like for me I'm a nurse, so
Mhm.
it's been like really easy for me just from my personal experience because like I'm hands-on with people and I interact with like strangers and my colleagues like every single day, and it's
Yeah.
easy for me to really live out my faith and interacting and trying to live out a life that is like loving and um worthy of the gospel.
Like I remember, like like several of my classmates when I was taking my undergrad, especially ones that I know from like Christian fellowships on campus.
Mhm.
The main reigning discussion and questions that we often have is like, how is studying glorifying God?
Oh.
Right? Like you just study, you feel like they're two separate things,
Mhm.
and your career is two separate things, and it's just interesting. Like you hear it from all different forms of Christian faiths, and they all have very similar questions. Like, what am I doing right now that is actually glorifying God? Is How is school and how is careers related to that at all?
Mm,
So I
mm,
think that's where we can, yeah, as you said, that there's really a disconnect between, um, like having mentors, vocational mentors, especially in this kind of like setting at church.
Gen Z is a generation that's concerned with ambition and their success in the workplace. So practically, it's a way where we can, mentor them in how they can live out their faith in the workplace. Also, like maybe another reason why it's important is because for the career itself, not just the spiritual aspect of it, it puts people in a place to succeed when it comes to the actual work. So if you have an experienced person,
True.
they can tell you, hey, this is what you should expect. This is how you can succeed in this place. This is what you should watch out for. And this is what people expect of you here in this specific type of work. So it's not just the spiritual aspect of it, but also how to perform tangibly in the workplace. And that's also important because we as Christians want to be known as competent people in the
Mhm.
workplace
Yeah.
because like what if, most Christians aren't prepared and they go into the workplace and then like, they people find out that they're Christians and then later on they'll be known to not be successful people in the workplace, right?
Hmm.
And that's not a good witness. Um so I think faith when it comes to work, it's important to also be somewhat competent because you don't want people thinking bad about Christians that they're incompetent, right? Um,
Interesting.
so I think that's important.
You might even have the right like intentions, right? You might be you might be going into the workplace with the the mission of the gospel at heart.
Hmm.
Um, but if like our actions do not yeah, does not reflect into like the workplace, then it's kind of like hard to really bridge that in itself, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the examples I can think of is like Joseph. Joseph, when he was taken into Egypt, he was very competent, very competent. That what was his name? I know it wasn't Pharaoh. It was
Potiphar.
Potiphar. Yeah,
Yeah.
praised him,
Mm.
acclaimed him. Just the way that God has been using him in that workplace, and everything that he does, right? Like it reflects into others, because like yeah, people do not see your faith necessarily, quote unquote. In this day and age,
Yeah.
they won't see like, oh, yo, that guy's a real Christian dude. Like you're not gonna be like that. They're, what they might see is like this guy's hardworking, this guy is dedicated, this guy is honest, this guy is full of integrity in his work. And so that's something that they'll see. And I think that's one of the ways that like how does the gospel fit into that. And that's why we need people to just be able to feed like yeah, kind of like yeah, just bouncing off of your thoughts, Mark.